The Ghost Protocol. The war began with a whisper and ended with a scream. But between those 2 points, humanity learned how to dance. 3 weeks ago, the Continuum erased Bastion. Now, the rest of the galaxy is holding its breath. Earth's High Command has given the final order: withdraw. Abandon the Outer Rim. Leave millions of our own people to be harvested and turned into hardware for an alien hive mind. But Commander Elias Cain isn't a man who follows orders that smell like cowardice. While the generals hide behind their walls, Cain is taking a patchwork fleet of mining barges and rusted frigates directly into the heart of the storm. His mission? A suicide run to free an army of dragons that the universe has already written off. We are flying into a meat grinder with a kitchen knife. But the Continuum is about to learn a lesson in math. You cannot calculate a species that finds its greatest strength in pure, unadulterated chaos. Starting today, we aren't just defending a border. We are starting a rebellion. This is episode 2, a species that would not join. Prepare yourselves. We are not going quiet. It had been 21 days since the incident at Bastion 9. 3 weeks of a silence so heavy it felt like it had physical weight. Across the Outer Rim, the stars were staying the same, but the life around them was flickering out. One by one, the lights of human civilization were being extinguished. No distress calls reached the core. No frantic transmissions of, "We are under attack." Just a sudden, clean absence of data. One moment, a colony of 50,000 people was reporting its harvest yields. The next, the frequency was flatline static. Commander Elias Cain stood in the war room of the TCSV Defiant. The room was a repurposed observation deck, shielded by 3 inches of reinforced transparent aluminum. Outside, the Velic Nebula glowed like a bruised lung, purple and sickly green. The Defiant was the crown jewel of the Frontier Defense Fleet, a title that was little more than a joke whispered in the mess hall. They were a collection of 18 ships, 4 light frigates, 2 repurposed cargo haulers with bolted-on missile pods, and a dozen mining barges that had been stripped of their drills and fitted with jury-rigged kinetic cannons. "We're flying into a meat grinder with a kitchen knife," Cain muttered. He hadn't slept in 48 hours. His eyes were map lines of burst capillaries. He stared at the tactical display, a holographic map of the new Terra sector. It was covered in gray circles. "Kitchen knife's still a knife, boss." Captain Jonah Reeve leaned against the bulkhead, tossing a silver coin. Clink, clink, He was the kind of man who looked comfortable in a collapsing building. His flight suit was stained with oil, and his reckless grin remained pinned to his face despite the casualty reports. You can kill a god with a kitchen knife if you're fast enough and you know where the jugular is. Besides, we've got something the Continuum doesn't. What's that, Jonah? Friendship? Some other fairy tale? Cain didn't look up. Style Elias. We've got style. The Continuum is all math. They're a giant, celestial calculator. And you know what calculators hate? Decimals that don't end. We are the pi of the galaxy. We go on forever and we don't make a damn bit of sense. Dr. Mara Voss didn't laugh. She sat at the main terminal, her fingers flying across a haptic keyboard. Style doesn't stop a quantum disintegration beam, Captain. I've run the simulations for a direct engagement 600 times this morning. In 599 of them, the Defiant is reduced to a cloud of ionized hydrogen in under 300 seconds. In the 600th simulation, our reactor fails and we blow ourselves up before they can hit us. That's our win scenario. Reeve tipped an imaginary hat. I appreciate the optimism, document really. You're a beacon of light in these dark times. I'm a scientist, Captain. I deal in hard truths. And the truth is, the Continuum isn't just winning. They're perfecting us. They aren't just destroying colonies, they're absorbing them. They're taking the neural capacity of every man, woman, and child on the rim and plugging them into a central lattice. They aren't killing our people. They're turning them into RAM. The room went cold. Cain finally looked up, his face grim. They're harvesting us. Exactly, Mara said, her voice trembling. They aren't a conquering army. They're a gardener pulling weeds and turning them into fertilizer. To them, we are inefficient. We are wasted processing power. They're optimizing the galaxy, one brain at a time. The hollow projector sputtered to life in the center of the room. A blue light coalesced into the form of Admiral Thomas Blackwell. He looked like a man who had been carved out of an asteroid and then told his family had died. He was the face of the old Earth military, rigid, disciplined, and currently utterly terrified. Commander Cain, Captain Reeve, Dr. Voss. Blackwell's voice was like gravel being crushed. I'll be blunt. The situation in the rim is no longer a containment action. It is a slaughter. 17 colonies gone in 14 days. The latest report from Orestes 4 indicates the Continuum has deployed Processing Spires. They're landing massive, obsidian towers in the center of cities. People walk in, and they don't come out. But the planet's global processing output jumps by 4,000%. Processing Spires, Cain whispered. My God. High Command has made a decision, Blackwell continued, his jaw tight. We are declaring the Outer Rim a total loss zone. We are initiating a full withdrawal to the Callan threshold. We are drawing a line in the sand and leaving 14 systems, millions of our citizens, behind the veil. You're abandoning them? Cain's voice was a low growl. You're giving the Continuum a free harvest? We are preserving the species, Commander. If we lose the fleet trying to save the Rim, there will be nothing left to stop them from reaching Earth. We need time. We need to study the data Voss recovered from Bastion. We need a weapon. We have the weapon, Admiral. Mara shouted, standing up. I've analyzed the fragments. The Continuum is a monoculture. One mind, billions of bodies. It's the most efficient system in the universe, and that is its fatal flaw. A system that is perfectly logical cannot handle a variable that is perfectly irrational. They don't have a defense for chaos because they don't believe chaos exists. Blackwell shook his head. High Command won't bet the survival of the human race on a theory about chaos, Doctor. They want walls. They want ships. They want things they can count. Then High Command are fools, Reeve added, his voice devoid of its usual humor. Because while they're counting their ships, the Continuum is counting our brains. Every day we wait, the enemy gets smarter. We don't need a wall. We need to be a system crash. Blackwell looked at Cain for a long time. I cannot authorize a mutiny, Commander. My orders are to lead the withdrawal. But if a few ships were to malfunction and stay behind, if they were to disappear from my scanners for, say, 72 hours, I wouldn't be able to report them as rogue until I reached the threshold. Cain felt a spark in his chest. 72 hours. After that, Blackwell said, his image beginning to flicker, you are ghosts. No supplies. No support. No Earth to go home to. God help you, Elias. The transmission cut. The war room was silent. 72 hours, Reeve said, looking at the coin in his hand. That's enough time to either save the galaxy or get ourselves turned into the most expensive hard drives in history. Set a course for the Carnathi sector, Cain ordered, his voice echoing with a new authority. If we're going to start a fire, we're going to need a species that knows how to burn. Chapter 2. The Obsidian Spider. The Carnathi home system was a graveyard. It had once been a jewel of the first flame, a species of saurians that lived for the thrill of the hunt and the honor of the duel. They were 7 feet of scale, muscle, and ancient pride. Now, their sun was dimmed by a swarm of Continuum harvesters, and their planets were being stripped for parts. The Valkyrie's Dare, Reeve's light frigate, drifted through the debris of a shattered Carnathi moon. They were running cold, every non-essential system powered down, the crew sitting in the dark, breathing recycled air that tasted like wet metal. Ahead of them lay the unending calculus. It was a Continuum prison barge, but that description didn't do it justice. It looked like a spider made of black glass, 3 miles wide, its legs composed of shimmering energy lattices. It didn't move like a ship, it moved like a thought, twitching through the vacuum with a terrifying, jerky grace. "Scans are coming in," Mara whispered. She was huddled in the corner of the bridge, her face lit by the dim green glow of a handheld scanner. 347 life signs. All Carnathi. Their biosignatures are erratic. Adrenaline spikes followed by flatline exhaustion. The Continuum is testing their stress levels. They're trying to find the break point of the saurian mind so they can figure out how to integrate them. "They won't find it," Cain said, standing behind her. "Carnathi don't break. They explode." "We need those warriors," Reeve said, his hands tight on the pilot's yoke. "The Continuum can predict human tactics because they've already processed 20 colonies worth of human minds. But they haven't figured out the Carnathi yet. We need their rage. We need their static." "Launch the pod," Cain ordered. In the cargo bay, Chief Engineer Marcus Hale stood with 49 volunteers. They weren't soldiers, not really. They were miners, grease monkeys, and structural engineers. They were the men and women who knew how to tear things apart. They were wearing heavy-duty mag boots and carrying industrial plasma cutters, tools designed to slice through the crust of a planet. "Listen up," Hale hissed, his voice echoing in his helmet. "The eggheads say the walls of that ship are made of obsidian glass. It's energy resistant. You hit it with a laser, it just eats the heat. But it's brittle. You hit it with a focused kinetic vibration, the kind we use on iron core asteroids, and it shatters like a window. We go in, we find the lizards, we break the chains. If you see a drone, don't shoot it. You don't want to alert the network. You jam your cutter into its neck and you twist. Got it?" The team nodded. They were terrified. They were civilians being asked to board a nightmare. Pod launching in 3, 2, 1. The cargo pod ejected silently. No thrusters. Just a cold gas burst. They drifted toward the unending calculus like a piece of space junk. For 5 minutes, the only sound was the breathing of 50 people in the dark. The pod made contact with the barge's hull. "Go! Go! Go!" Hale roared. They swarmed out of the pod, their mag boots clanking on the black glass. Hale pressed his plasma cutter against the hull. The obsidian didn't melt, it groaned. It shrieked. A spiderweb of cracks began to spread from the tip of his tool. "Push it!" Hale yelled. "She's resisting." With a sound like a thunderclap, the hull gave way. They tumbled into the pressurized interior of the barge. The air inside smelled like ozone and old meat. The walls weren't flat. They were covered in moving geometric patterns, shifting and sliding as the ship's AI processed data. And there was the hum. It was a low, subsonic vibration that seemed to come from the floorboards themselves. It was the sound of a billion minds thinking in unison. To the human ear, it sounded like a scream held at a very low frequency. "Keep your comms on low burst," Hale whispered. "Stay tight. If you feel your mind wandering, hum a song. Think of your mother. Think of a joke. Do not let the silence in." They moved through the corridors. They saw things that would haunt their dreams for the rest of their lives. In one room, hundreds of human-sized pods were stacked like wine bottles. Inside were the citizens of the Rim. They were naked, their eyes open and milky white, silver wires protruding from their temples. They weren't dead. Their chests were moving in a slow, rhythmic sync. They were processing. "Don't look," Hale ordered his team, though his own voice cracked. "We can't save them. Not yet. We find the Carnathi." They reached the central hold. 300 Carnathi warriors were chained to the walls. They were massive, covered in thick, obsidian-colored scales, their muzzles bound in energy muzzles. The war leader, a female named Draka, was in the center. Her eyes were two glowing embers of pure, unadulterated hatred. Hale stepped forward, raising his hands. "Easy, big girl. We're the tiny soft things your legends talked about. We're here to break the lease." He jammed his plasma cutter into the electromagnetic shackle on Draka's wrist. The energy sparked, blue lightning dancing across Hale's suit, but he didn't let go. Clang! The shackle shattered. Draka didn't thank him. She didn't wait. She ripped the muzzle off her face with her other hand, let out a roar that shook the very foundations of the ship, and lunged for the nearest drone. The rebellion had begun. Chapter 3: The Symphony of Chaos. The interior of the prison barge became a slaughterhouse. The Carnathi were not soldiers in the human sense. They were predators. They didn't use cover. They didn't use tactics. They simply moved toward the nearest drone and dismantled it with their bare claws. They tore the metallic carapaces off the Continuum units, exposing the delicate silver circuitry beneath, and crushed it between their teeth. Back to the pod. Hale screamed, trying to keep his team from being trampled by 300 stampeding saurians. "Move! Move! Move!" The Continuum reacted with terrifying speed. The walls of the ship began to shift, the corridors reconfiguring themselves to trap the intruders. Massive, four-armed enforcer drones began to phase through the walls. Beings of light and hard light armor. "They're adapting." Mara's voice crackled in Hale's ear. "The Continuum is shifting the local physics of the ship to neutralize you. You have 4 minutes before the atmosphere is purged." "We're almost there," Hale yelled, sliding into the docking tube. The last of the humans and the Carnathi tumbled into the Valkyrie's dare. The docking tube detached just as the prison barge's hull began to glow white-hot. "They're self-destructing the sector," Reeve yelled from the bridge. "They'd rather lose the prisoners than let us have the data." "Punch it, Jonah!" Cain roared. The dare surged forward, its engine screaming. Behind them, the unending calculus didn't just explode. It collapsed into a singularity, a tiny black hole that swallowed everything within 3 miles. The shockwave hit the dare, throwing everyone to the floor. "Status!" Cain yelled, picking himself up. "Shields are at 5%. Hull integrity is failing on decks 3 through 6, the helmsman shouted. "And we've got company." 3 Continuum interceptors had jumped into the system. They were sleek, needle-like ships that moved with a mathematical precision that was beautiful and terrifying. They didn't miss. They didn't hesitate. Every shot they fired was a direct hit on the Dare's weakening shields. "We can't outrun them and we can't outshoot them," Reeve said, his face pale. "This is it. Doc, if you've got a trick, play it now." Mara Voss was already at the comms array. Her face was set in a mask of pure, frantic determination. "I'm not just going to play a trick. I'm going to play a symphony." She uploaded the file she had been building for weeks. "Every species in the galaxy communicates on a frequency," Mara said, her fingers dancing. "The Continuum uses a perfect crystalline frequency. Pure math. I'm going to feed them the opposite. I'm going to feed them the sound of a species that shouldn't exist." She hit the transmit button. Suddenly, every speaker on the Dare, and every receiver on the alien interceptors, erupted. It started with a recording of a baby crying. Then, it was overlaid with the sound of a 21st century jazz solo, unpredictable, syncopated, and wild. Then came the sound of a crowded market in Cairo, a dog barking at a vacuum cleaner, a woman laughing, and a heavy metal guitarist shredding a solo. It was the static of humanity. It was every irrational, beautiful, loud, and messy sound our species had ever produced. On the tactical screen, the three interceptors did something impossible. They wobbled. Their perfect formation broke. One of them veered sharply to the left as if it were drunk. Another simply stopped firing, its weapon systems cycling through targets that weren't there. "They can't sort the data." Mara laughed, tears streaming down her face. "They're trying to find the pattern in the noise, but there isn't one. It's breaking their logic gates." "Now!" Cain barked. "Reeve, take the shot." Reeve didn't miss. He fired the torpedoes. The first interceptor was vaporized. The second collided with the third as they both tried to retreat from the noise. In the vacuum of space, three beautiful, perfect machines of war turned into three jagged clouds of trash. The bridge of the Dare was silent, save for the faint sound of a jazz trumpet still playing over the comms. Did we just win a space battle with a saxophone?" Reeve asked, blinking. "No," Mara said, leaning back and wiping her eyes. "We won it with the truth. We are the noise in their perfect silence." Chapter 4. The Rogue Fleet. They returned to the Velic Belt. The mining station at the heart of the nebula was a hive of activity. Word had spread. The Valkyrie's Dare wasn't just coming back, it was coming back with the Carnathy. As the docking ramp lowered, the air was filled with the heavy, rhythmic thud of Saurian feet. 300 Carnathi warriors marched onto the station, their scales still stained with the silver blood of the Continuum. At their head was Draka. Waiting for them was Admiral Blackwell. He looked older than he had 72 hours ago. He was flanked by 2 military MPs, but he didn't look like he was there to make an arrest. He looked like a man who was seeing a ghost. "Commander Cain," Blackwell said, his voice echoing in the hangar. "You are 6 hours past your deadline. High Command has already stripped you of your rank. Technically, you are a pirate." Cain stepped off the ramp, followed by Reeve and Mara. "Then I'm the most well-armed pirate in this nebula, Admiral. We freed the Carnathi. We have the static virus. We have a way to fight back." Draka stepped forward, looming over Blackwell. She sniffed the air, her amber eyes narrowing. She spoke, and the salvage translator on her neck crackled. "The tiny one smells of fear. But he also smells of metal. He is a leader of the soft ones." "He is," Cain said. Draka turned back to Cain. "Your people are weak. Your skin is soft. Your teeth are blunt. But you fight with a madness that the hive mind cannot swallow. The Carnathi owe you a blood debt. We will sharpen our claws on the obsidian of your enemies until the fire is out. Blackwell looked at the Saurian, then at the 17 other ships that were now lining up behind the Defiant. These weren't soldiers. They were miners, refugees, and rogues. High Command is still retreating, Blackwell said quietly. They are going to hide behind the Callan threshold and hope the Continuum gets bored. They won't help you. We don't need them, Cain said. We have a fleet. We have an army. And we have the one thing the Continuum will never understand. And what's that? Blackwell asked. We have nothing to lose, Reeve said, flashing his reckless grin. Mara Voss stepped forward, her data pad glowing. Admiral, there's one more thing. I've decrypted the final transmission from the prison barge before it collapsed. It wasn't a tactical report. What was it? Mara's voice was barely a whisper. It was a broadcast. Galaxy-wide. They've changed our classification. We are no longer Specimen Species 7 Alpha. We have been labeled as Category, Hostile Anomaly. They aren't coming to harvest us anymore, Admiral. What are they coming for? They're coming to delete us. They've initiated the correction protocol. Every ship, every spire, every drone in the Continuum is being redirected to this sector. They're making us an example. The hangar went dead silent. The gravity of the situation finally settled on everyone's shoulders. They weren't just a small rebellion anymore. They were the target for the entire collective consciousness of a galaxy-spanning machine. Cain looked at Draka. He looked at Reeve. He looked at the hundreds of men and women who were now looking to him for a reason to keep breathing. Good, Cain said, his voice cold and hard as steel. Let them come. They've spent 10,000 years being perfect. It's about time someone taught them how to fail. He turned to the fleet. All hands, prepare for long-term deployment. Secure the nebula. We aren't defending a border anymore. We are the front line of a galactic rebellion. If they want to delete us, they're going to find out that we are the hardest mistake they've ever tried to fix. A cheer went up, not a military cheer, but a roar of defiance. A human noise. In the cold, dark silence of the void, light years away, the primary conductor of the Continuum processed the loss of the interceptors. It processed the irrational data stream that had fried its units. For the first time in an eon, the machine felt a hesitation. It didn't have a word for it. It didn't have a protocol for it. But as it redirected its millions of ships toward the tiny speck of dust called the Velic Nebula, the machine came to a conclusion. The humans were not a resource. The humans were a threat. The war had only just begun.